Hello, welcome to Revline 89, and for today we have a different type of video. So, before you guys click off, for those who are interested, we will be pro-charging the car soon, in the spring, or give or take, and pro-charging the 4.0. Now, let's go over some realistic specs that we are looking at with Procharging the 4.0. So this is going to benefit you guys who have 4.0s out there who are interested in knowing what kind of horsepower gains you can get. Is it worth it, and so forth. Now, if you go based off of money, is it worth it? Obviously not. It's never worth to spend any money into a vehicle that you customize because you'll never see your return. So let's just throw that out there so you guys know. We got the spec sheet as of today's date, prices and everything on here. Getting sponsorships can really help you guys out, but that's, a whole nother subject. So, let's get started. Let's go over some of the base number facts for you guys. So, the 4.0 Mustang puts out 210 horsepower to the crank from factory. Now, to the crank, if you guys are not familiar with that, that is the horsepower number that all automakers say. So when they say the Coyote makes 425 horsepower, if you're going to buy a brand new Coyote, or if you want to buy a brand new Hellcat that's 707 horsepower, that's just horsepower to the crank. When the horsepower travels, when the power actually is put to the wheels, that's a different number. It's always lower than the crank number. So the actual real horsepower, when you take a calculator, they say horsepower loss from the crank is about 15 to 18%. So if we're making 210 horsepower to the crank from factory, minus, let's go 16% for our figures in between there. That means, let's see here. And our calculator thing is not working right. So 210 minus 16% is 176. So that's just a guesstimate estimate to the wheel horsepower for the 4.0 Mustang. So stock 210 horsepower to the crank would be an estimated 176 horsepower to the wheels. Now, we did dyno our 4.0 Mustang when it was stock, and we did 174, I believe. So that's pretty close to this 16% loss. So it's a little more than 16% horsepower loss from the crank. When we did shorty headers and bolt-ons, air intake and stuff, and custom exhaust with shorty headers, stock cats, we did 184 horsepower to the wheel. So that was a good thing. When we went with long tube headers and no cats, we did 192 horsepower to the wheels on a Obama 93 octane fuel tune. So with that being said, if we're at 192 horsepower with a cheap junk tune, keep in mind Obama tunes are junk. Now, they're awesome for a stock or a lightly modified vehicle, but when you supercharge or boost your vehicle, nitrous, whatever you want to do, to your 4.0, the Obama tunes are just junk. After you actually lose horsepower, you want to get it dyno tuned. Get a tune done from a dyno, because those are going to be your best bet to fine tune and squeeze as much horsepower out as possible. Okay, let's clear all this now and go under here. So if we're making 192 horsepower to the wheels, let's see what crank that would be. Plus 16% equals, let's see, where are we at? We gotta reset this thing. I hate this computer calculator. Why doesn't it? Okay, let's go ahead and clear this all. So 192 plus 16% equals 200. Okay, so to the crank, we are making 222.7, give or take, crank horsepower. So now let's go ahead and clear this whole thing up. And let's say we're 192 horsepower to the wheels. The Procharged Claims, and I've weighed out these claims with other people who have Procharged their Mustang, and the Procharged claims to give 50 to 60% increase. Now, here's what kind of bothers me a little bit. On the website, it says 50 to 70% increase, but when I was sent a paper here from Procharged on 2005 to 2010 Mustangs, it says 55 to 60% increase. You can see for the stage 2, we'll go over all the stages, stage 2 kit. But on this website, it says for the stage 2 kit, it's 50 to 70%. So I'm not quite sure why the website says 70% and why this actual paper sheet says as high as 60%. So from what I've learned from people, the lowest I've ever seen someone get was 50%, and the average is like 53 to 55% horsepower gain. I did see a guy who got 65% horsepower gain. I don't know whatever happened to him. I can't find him anymore. This was about a year ago. I talked to him. Don't know where he went. He dropped off the face of the earth. But we will be going with the Stage 2 intercooled system with P1SC. It can handle options of 8 PSI boost. Horsepower gain, according to the paper sheet, is 55 to 60%. It's a 2-core intercooler. There are options listed here. I don't know if there's any more options that a dealer has access to, but we have access to a polished finish Procharged. That obviously does nothing. A gear set for noise reduction, which we're not getting because I want it to be louder. There is a D1SC Procharged tuner kit only. I'm not quite sure what that does. It doesn't say anything about horsepower gain. It just has a little line, so I don't know if it gains any horsepower with it. There's also a 3-core intercooler system upgrade. So you're upgrading from 2 cores with 3-inch tubing. It just has a line under horsepower gain, so I don't know if that adds anything or not. But I will be requesting all of that. Anything that can increase the horsepower, we are going to have the shop look into. If you guys are interested, for the cheaper Procharged, there is a high output intercooled system which can handle 6 pounds of boost, and that horsepower gain is 45 to 50%. That's a 2-core cooler. Then there's another option here which I'm not quite sure. It's intercooled tuner kit with P1SC. That is, it says boost options specify, and it says horsepower gain specify, so I don't quite know what that is. It looks like that comes with the P1SC supercharger, but that's the cheapest one that you could order. So, okay. Well, let's just use the numbers that they have here. So, if we're making, and these are the 55 to 60% horsepower gain is to the wheel. So we're looking at, if we can gain 55%, so let's do 192 horsepower. That's what we're making right now to the wheels, plus 55% equals, that would give us 297 horsepower to the wheels. If we make the minimum of what the paper says. The paper says a minimum of 55. The website says 50. So let's go ahead and just use 50. So let's do 192 plus 50% gain equals 288 horsepower. So the bare minimum we should get is 288 horsepower to the wheel, and that is just with the stage 2 kit. That's not if you do these extra stuff, which I don't know if it helps or not, but that's just with the stage 2 kit. So in all reality, let's go ahead and let's do our 192 horsepower to the wheels plus 60% horsepower increase that it says you can get, that would put us at 307 to the wheel. Now, 307 to the wheel plus 16% loss, that means we would be at 356, give or take, horsepower to the crank. So from all dealer standards and manufacturer and car companies go by crank numbers, our car, if it had this much horsepower, the dealership would say it's got 356 horsepower, and that's to the crank. So that's a nice number. That's what I want. I want 350 crank horsepower. I want 400, but so with 350 crank horsepower, I do not know what we will make, because every single 4.0 is different. I've seen guys dyno a stock 4.0 and make 168 horsepower to the wheels. And I've seen guys dyno their stock 4.0 Mustang and dyno 178 to the wheels on stock everything. It varies differently based on every vehicle. Even though they're all this stock motor, stock training, stock and all that, it varies differently. I don't know why that is. It's just, I guess, I don't know, timing inside the engine and combustion and stuff like that. I guess, every vehicle is made a little bit differently, even though they're made the same. I've learned this. I had two of the same vehicles one time, and I did a same exact exhaust bit on them, and they sounded differently, which was weird. But okay, so with that being said, we are also, the plan is to go with the one that does 55 to 60% horsepower gain. So let's use a conservative number. Let's do our 192 horsepower to the wheels plus 55% horsepower gain. That's the minimum they say. That puts us at 297. That's with I'm not sure if that's on a stock tune too. I believe that's just a stock tune. So what we will be doing is we will be having the garage dyno tune. They're going to professionally dyno tune the supercharger in the car as well. So on top of the 55% horsepower gain, they will be dyno tuning it. On top of that, I'm going to look into all these add-ons, like the 3-core intercooler system. I don't know if that's going to do anything or not. If it doesn't increase the horsepower, I'm going to tell them don't worry about it, because I basically want the horsepower. I probably will go with the polished finish Procharger, because the standard ones are really ugly. I mean, the metal looks really bad. It just looks really ugly. I want a black one, but for the GT, it looks like they make a black one, but it doesn't show it on here. But again, we will see. Let's see. You know what's crazy is if you got a 4.6 supercharger, 4.6 V8 Mustang, for the same supercharger system, you're looking at 70 to 75% horsepower gain. That's crazy. Cray, my friends. Okay, so we're looking at a minimum, I would say, of 295 horsepower. And that's unacceptable to me. That's without a dyno tune. So I think we're going to be 300 plus. That unicorn guy who got 70% from his supercharger kit, I think he had some other stuff done. I think he said he spent like $1,000 on a tune, which is just nuts. But so let's just, for fun, let's throw out 192 horsepower to the wheel plus 70% horsepower gain. So if we could make 70% horsepower gain, which is like 1 in a billion probably, that would put us at 326 horsepower to the wheel plus 16% loss. That would put us at 378 crank horsepower, close to that 400 number. That's what we want. I want a 400 crank horsepower number eventually. So with that being said, that's, you know, the whole plans on the Procharger and everything else like that. So, we shall see, we shall see, we shall see what happens. Thank you guys for watching this video. I know it was long. I hope you enjoyed the photos from how it was stock. And I hope you guys can hit that subscribe button because a lot of cool things coming. And this video is sponsored by